C.H.U.D, the 1984 horror film distributed by New World Pictures, obviously featuring two different and various acronyms depending how far you get into the film. So there is a photographer named George. He's basically given up fashion photography and he's taking on sort of a more artful or meaningful type work. So he's focusing on photographing the homeless population. We also do have two other main characters. We have Captain Bosch, who is investigating these disappearances, as well as Reverend Shepherd, who actually happens to be, runs a soup kitchen, works directly with the homeless population. So eventually this trio does meet up, they start working together, and they discover that there's actually just sort of a toxic waste that's being left in the sewer, which runs under the code name Contamination Hazard Urban Disposal, which obviously forms the words C.H.U.D. We later do realize this is not just a simple cover-up with that acronym, but rather the homeless population hasn't been really disappearing. They've come into contact with this stuff, and they've basically mutated into humanoid cannibalistic creatures, which basically what the real acronym does stand for. A cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller, which is kind of funny if you stop to think about it, just the whole acronyms, but it works. It's an 80s film. So we do have, obviously Daniel Stern does play the part of Reverend Shepherd. We also have a brief appearance by John Goodman. Creatures themselves are actually kind of tacky. They kind of look like maybe something from humanoids from the deep, except they have these fluorescent glowing eyes. I really wasn't too impressed by them. I thought it was somewhat of a dull story. I know it does have a cult following, and it's a lot better liked than the sequel. So eventually at some point the government does intervene. They decide that they're going to block off all the escape routes, and they're going to pump some sort of a pesticide type gas to kill the C.H.U.Ds, to just finally be done with them. Unfortunately, they do make their way out, so obviously the population does come in contact with this. There are news crews around as well, and so obviously the whole C.H.U.D thing is uncovered. All responsible parties are, basically dealt away with or deal with the consequences. At one point in time, there was talk from Criterion about releasing a special edition release of C.H.U.D, which is an odd choice for them. They usually go for classier picks, and they were going to include a bunch of new special features. This had been announced in July of 2011. Fortunately, this was actually just part of an April Fool's prank, so that never came to pass. In 1989, we saw the sequel release to C.H.U.D, which is called Bud the C.H.U.D. This was originally intended to have been a theatrical release. Fortunately, it went straight to video. I actually thought this was a lot more fun than the original. I know a lot of people really don't care for it too much. Severely deviates from the original. It's more of a horror comedy. So at this point in time, for some reason, the government has decided that they want to try and keep up with the C.H.U.D project, even though they've been told to just can the whole thing. But we have a sort of a soldier who has been nicknamed Bud. He's being held at the Disease Control Center. Unfortunately, we also have a group of high school kids which sort of break in. They're trying to, I guess, get some extra credit or somewhat for their biology class. So they steal the corpse. They do take it home, and we have somewhat of a silly whole scene where they're sneaking the corpse into the house. The parents don't catch wind of it. It eventually reanimates, and it's basically just long after they've left the house because they thought they left it locked in the basement. It's basically just wandering about the house. The parents are still walking around clueless, going about their business, and how much of a dumbass do you have to be not to notice something's a bit off in your house, especially the fact that maybe something stinks. So it does get out, it attacks the dog, French poodle, and that becomes the first C.H.U.D. Apparently, they don't look like the traditional C.H.U.Ds. It's more of a zombie-like creature, and they obviously do go for brains, but it's sort of also transmitted like a zombie-like disease. So basically, once bitten or attacked, you're basically the next C.H.U.D. So he's basically, this Bud fellow is wandering around just attacking people at random. He even attacks a woman doing aerobics in her home. just sort of a silly little flirty scene there until she realizes he's some dead guy. The characters really are just unbelievably clueless, so eventually the government once again steps in. They try using somewhat of a fire extinguisher type device to freeze them, which works temporarily, except the C.H.U.D have this ability to raise their body temperature so they can melt themselves. We later discover that if we mix freezing with an electrical charge, the creature will explode. So when the C.H.U.Ds gather at a sort of a high school dance for a buffet, they basically are just corralled by these three high school kids. Obviously, the Bud character is in love with the girl in the group, so she wears a skimpy swimsuit, draws them into the whole swimming pool area. They're all dumped in. They use this fire extinguisher device to freeze them and then once again set off the electrical charge. That's actually kind of funny and sad because Bud literally rips his heart out and offers it to the girl, and they basically just freeze him and he's blown to smithereens. His head is severed and he's still trying to say hi to her, and obviously she's repulsed and terrified of this creature, so it's pretty funny. It definitely does have some humorous moments. It's a film that doesn't take itself too seriously, and even though it's nothing at all like the original, it's serious deviation. I really did enjoy this one a lot more. I really don't know why, but I did, and I'm pretty sure the first one obviously has a stronger following. So this film was originally intended for theatrical release. It went straight to video, big duh. As far as I know, the only official DVD release of this film that exists is actually by Lionsgate, and it's on one of their 8 film packs. Had more of a leaning towards the second film rather than the first, but yeah, nothing too in-depth there. So I will leave you to your day, and I will talk to you later.